Welcome to my podcast story, the show where podcasters share the real journey behind their voices, from their first mic check to their biggest milestones. Every episode reveals the lessons, challenges, and breakthrough that shape a podcast star's journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I can't wait for you to hear today's story. Okay, tell us your name and what you...
My name is Dr. Ayla Wolf, and I own a clinic that specializes in both functional neurology as well as Chinese medicine. And I work primarily with people with neurological disorders.
Wow, welcome to the podcast, Ayla.
Thank you for having me.
What's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is called Life After Impact, the Concussion Recovery Podcast. And it all started because I wrote a book last year, and it was a book for people that have post-concussion syndrome, people that have had a concussion and have lingering symptoms that aren't getting better on their own. And many people end up, trying to navigate the medical system, trying to figure out how to get better. And some people end up feeling pretty lost and hopeless. And so that's who I wrote the book for. And it ended up being 600 pages long at the end of the day. And so I realized that I needed to find some other way of getting the information out to people, because many people with brain injuries and concussions, sometimes reading is challenging because of maybe eye strain, eye fatigue, headaches, difficulty concentrating, things like that. So I realized a lot of people maybe don't want to pick up a 600-page book. And that's how my podcast got started. I wanted to take the information in the book and present it to people in a way that, they don't have to read it on a page. They can just listen to it.
Yeah. Wow. Life after impact. At first, when I saw the name of the podcast, what I was thinking was like, wow, so you're talking about life after you start making impact. And I kid you not.
So you were saying you heard the name Life After Impact and thought it meant something completely different.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, life after impact. I was like, wow. I was like, she's really talking about impacts. That's such a strong call. And then later on, I was like, oh, wow. So you're talking about impact. Oh, wow. Do you get that a lot from when you talk about the name of the podcast?
Gosh, the name. So it's, almost 2026 now. That name came to me back in 2015. I actually wanted to start, I wanted to start a business that helped people with concussions try to figure out kind of what resources were available to them, and do kind of some almost like life coaching work with people with concussions. So the name came to me back then, and my Instagram account, Life After Impact, has, it still has a few of my original posts from 2015 that I kept on there.
Yeah.
So I never really got the business. I never really got that business off the ground. I never really did anything with it until I started the podcast. So I kind of sat on that name for 10 years.
Wow. 10 good years, life after impact. So you wrote the book first, and then after writing the book, you decided, okay, yeah, I should start a podcast.
I did, yeah. And the podcast originally started with myself and one of the people who work with me, one of the clinicians who works with me, Sophia. And we would try to meet like once a week to do the podcast in between both of our busy clinic schedules. That was really hard to maintain. And so I still do podcast episodes with her. I kind of branched out and started to also interview other people as well. And so now I talk to people involved in research, other clinicians that specialize in brain injuries, and experts in the field. And it's been great. I've gotten to reach out to a lot of really amazing people with good information that they have to share, and it's been a good way to just spread the word.
Tell me about the very first beginning when you started the podcast. What was it like? The first couple of episodes. How was the podcast before you even tell me?
Yeah, well, I knew not a whole lot about podcasting, and my sister has a friend who is a sound engineer, and so I said, hey, can you tell me like what to do with these audio tracks? And so he showed me how to edit my podcast in GarageBand. So I basically, created, I spent about, 2 hours listening to music hooks to try to find the right little music intro. And so I picked out kind of the beginning music, recorded the intro, recorded the, medical disclaimer at the end, and learned how to download the audio out of Riverside or originally I think we
Yeah.
recorded those initial episodes directly in GarageBand. So the initial episodes we recorded right into GarageBand, and I definitely wasted a lot of time trying to figure out how to edit things, but I had a little bit of background because I make continuing education courses for other uh, healthcare providers, and so I had a little bit of background with some like video editing, and so that definitely helped.
Well, how old is the podcast?
Almost a year. It started in January of last year.
Yay! Congratulations! Wow.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
for context, when was the book published?
The book was published the last week of June of this year. So the book hasn't even been out for 6 months yet. But I had pretty much finished writing the book at the end of last year, and then it took me another 6 months to just do a lot of the editing and final formatting and everything. So the book was pretty much written, but I took another 6 months to edit it, and then published it in June of this year.
Wow. And reaching out to guests, interviewing guests on your podcast, how has the experience?
I've loved it because it's given me an excuse to reach out to people who I would just love to talk to anyway and ask them questions. So surprisingly, it's just been so much fun to connect with other people in the space and have a conversation with them and find out what they're either doing in their clinics or, I just spoke with a guy who started a company that developed this helmet that is used for neck strengthening, and he was granted an award by the NFL, the National Football League in the United States here.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to just talk to people who are innovators and doing really unique work in this whole field of concussion prevention, concussion recovery, brain health, all of it.
Wow. Wow. Right now, you've been on the podcast for like a year, and a lot of seeds have been planted, and you've learned a lot. What's the behind the scenes of the podcast like? What's the workflow like? How does an episode move from idea to pop?
Mm, well, if I'm interviewing somebody else, honestly, sometimes the hardest thing is getting our schedules to line up because I still see patients full time and I have a lot of other things, other work that I do. And so the podcast is really happening outside of a 45-hour work week. And so I think the hardest part is just finding the time to where my schedule can line up with other people's schedules, and then we can actually get an episode recorded. So the calendar
Yeah.
is really like the hardest part of the whole thing. Um, and so usually once I, have a
Wow.
guest that I want to interview, I, depending on how well I
Okay.
already know them, sometimes it's very easy to just come up with a number of questions. Sometimes I have to do a little bit more research to really get a good idea of how
Hello.
to ask some meaningful questions that lead to good conversation. So I
Yeah.
definitely feel like the more prepared I am going into an interview, the better the interview goes. So I do a certain, amount of prep work. And then once we record the episode, I also do I do all my own editing, which is very time consuming. And so a lot of times
Yeah. Tell me about
it
it.
might, yeah, yeah. So it might be, 3 to 5 hours on the back end to download everything, to create the audio track, um, and then also upload it and like, provide the show notes, the description, the cover art. I
Yeah.
mean, I do all my own cover art. I put the guest picture on the cover art, so that changes every week. So yeah, it's a lot of work.
Wow. And currently there are AI tools out there and some workflows and automations. What would do you have any you'd love to share with us that kind of like it's a time saver, it makes the process easier?
Yeah, so I use Buzzsprout for my hosting, And so that platform has AI that helps to generate the show description. And so usually I'll start with their AI generated show description, and then I go in and I edit it if I don't love it.
Yeah.
I've also on my website, I post all the episodes on my own website, which means that every time I have an episode come out, I create a new web page for that episode. And so I also take the audio track and I upload it to Otter, which is an AI transcription. And then once I
Yeah.
have the transcription, sometimes I might also plug that into ChatGPT to generate a title for the podcast episode if I'm having trouble coming up with a good episode title.
Yeah.
So I am using AI to help with kind of the show description, the title of the podcast, mostly those things, transcript. Yeah.
Oh, what do you use for editing? You okay. Before I ask, is your podcast audio only or audio and
Well, right now it's mostly audio on all of the podcasting platforms that I publish on, except I do have a YouTube channel where I might take clips from an episode and actually have video content of the interview. I'm sitting on a mountain of video that I haven't had time to edit and cut and post. So,
yeah.
that is actually, yeah, where I have a lot of content that I want to put out on YouTube, and I just haven't had the time to do any of the video editing for it. So someday maybe I'll find
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. Of course, of course, of course. Okay, yeah. So you use Otter and then you take the transcripts and you put it in ChatGPT and you come up with titles, description, and all that. Yeah. Are you open to me recommending a tool you could?
Sure.
Okay. I think there's a tool called Cast Magic. I that's what I use. And with Cast Magic, you can upload the audio, right? And once you do that, it's generate the titles, generate the description automatically, and then you could also write blog posts for the website. And you can also make clips from Cast Magic. You can cut sections of it, and it will come up with transcripts and captions for the clips. You can just copy and put on the publishing platform. Does that make?
Yeah. Does it do video as well or just audio?
Yeah, it does video.
Oh,
That's what I
okay.
use for video. It does video.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
think of it, author combine. It will generate the transcript for you, and then you can also chat with the episode. So
Hmm.
beyond just generating those description and all that, let's say you want to like say, okay, what was the key insights this guest talked about in this episode, right? It will bring it up for you and pop that stuff rather than having to copy and paste and put in ChatGPT.
Yeah, nice. And is it pretty user friendly?
Yeah, I mean,
A bit of a learning curve.
no, it is. I mean, at first when it started, like I think 6 months ago, it wasn't that user friendly, but now they've done a lot of revamping, and yeah, it's user friendly now. You get to the homepage, it allows you to import, right? And you could connect your RSS feed, but the reason why that wouldn't be something I would recommend is because um for someone like me, I like to upload the episodes and get those transcripts before I publish my episode.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so the RSS feed, you could do that, but it won't be that important because it's solely for episodes that already be published, which by then would already have titles and description. So there will be no need, really no need for.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Cast
Okay. Yeah.
magic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's what I use. So everything is combined and in one place. You talk about guests. I want us to zoom in a bit about on your guest workflow for the podcast.
Um, so because I am on the faculty of uh, an institution that does a lot of teaching for clinicians
Yeah.
on traumatic brain injuries and other issues, I have a very large network of brilliant clinicians that I have the honor of knowing and working with.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to reach out to a lot of my colleagues that I know also treat a lot of patients with concussions. And so I've definitely still am working through my list of people that I know personally and that I know through my contacts with the educational institution that I'm on the faculty of. So that's been helpful. But I read a lot of research and I have found that it's really fun to also reach out to the actual researchers and scientists who do this kind of work in terms of studying brain injuries and concussions, because they give you also this really interesting kind of perspective on it as well. So it's been fun to interview both clinicians and then also researchers and then also people who have had concussions and who have struggled and who have a story to tell, right? A story to share. And so I also like to interview people who just have their own history with the concussions and brain injuries. And so it's a nice blend of, personal stories as well as researchers, scientists, clinicians in that space.
Okay, let's say I was a potential guest. I'm not a researcher or scientist. Let's say I was, right, and you reached out to me and you sent me an email. Oh, I'd love to have you on the podcast. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. What happens?
Well, usually if I've read the clinicians, if I've read their research, there's usually a specific topic that they've written papers on and that I would want to ask them questions about. So one of the researchers that I talked to has a number of papers where he's been studying like blood biomarkers to see like, is there a way where you could draw a person's blood and then looking at different markers to say, did they get a concussion? What is the prognosis? And so, like there are, this is very much cutting edge because we don't really have definitive blood tests out there. So it's really interesting to read someone's research and say, this person's on the cutting edge of
Yeah.
this type of science. And then to be able to ask them, where are you at now? What is the next research that you have going on? And what is this, what is this actually telling us? And so it's been really fun to be able to read their actual research, come up with a lot of questions specific to their specific area that they study, and then, do a deeper dive into that.
Oh, okay. So you've done the research, you've done those parts. Um, Walk me through the logistics of actually getting them to be on the podcast.
Sometimes I have found that LinkedIn is a very good way of reaching out to people.
Okay.
Uh, LinkedIn is a great platform for professionals, and a lot of the scientists and the clinicians are on LinkedIn, and people usually respond. People usually respond well to me approaching them through LinkedIn if I don't know them personally already. So that's probably the main avenue that I use to contact people.
Okay. So you contact me and I'm like, yeah. Do you send me a link to book a meeting or what happens?
I have I have a podcast guest form, so I made that form using Google Forms.
Okay.
So I will often send people a link to that form, and that way I can collect their phone number, their email address, a bio. I ask them to give me kind of like 3 questions they'd like me to ask them, give a headshot, and then also,
Yeah.
click a consent that says, yes, I'm okay with you using my video,
Yeah.
my picture and all that. So I'll have people fill out that guest form, and that really streamlines the process. And then from there, we have to schedule, which, like I said, is often the hardest part, is figuring out a time when we're both available at the same time to record.
Quick break. Before we continue, I'd love to invite you to join the My Podcast Story newsletter. Each week, I share highlights from our guest stories, behind the scenes podcasting tips, and resources to help you grow your own show. You can sign up at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. Now, let's get back to the episode. Okay, so wait, I'm not sure I got this last part. So the time parts, how do you send them a separate link to book a time? What does that look?
I use Riverside, and so I will, in Riverside, you can obviously schedule a podcast ahead of time, and then Riverside sends out the links automatically. So once I find out the time that works for both of us, then I'll put that into Riverside, and then
Okay,
that sends out. Yeah.
I guess my question is, how do you find the time that works for both of us? Let's say it's me now. Do you do the email back and forth? So what time it is? This time works for me. Is this time available for you? Like, how do you do?
Yeah, right now I do often do the back and forth email only because Thursdays are really the one day that I don't see patients. And so I do try to schedule as many of my podcasts on a Thursday as possible. So I usually start with that. I usually ask people, is there a time on a Thursday where you're available? And then I try to aim for Thursdays to make that work. If it doesn't work, then, I might default to a weekend time if people are available. I tend to not do things too late in the evenings because, um, I usually have already had a long work day, so I want to be more fresh when I record my podcast, not do it late
Yeah.
at night.
I'm just curious. Right now, when you're recording, are you on a Wednesday or on the top?
Well, right now it's a Wednesday at 6 p.m. and I've been
Okay.
working for 10 hours, so I'm a little tired.
Wow, that's a lot. You need to rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the reason I was asking these questions, I'm just curious to see how you could possibly streamline the process.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I need to be in full control of my schedule because not only I could create a calendar where I only open up certain blocks on Thursdays, and I did do that at one point, and then I had such a hard time maintaining my clinic schedule and my podcast schedule and my personal schedule. I literally had
Wait,
three
wait, wait. I'm
calendars.
confused. I'm confused. Wait, can you explain what you mean by you had a hard time maintaining this?
I had three different schedules because I have three different programs where I have different schedules. So it was just too much.
Wow, I'm not sure I understand you, right? And I would think I would say what I think you're saying, and then you let me know if that's what you're saying. You created a link, right? Okay, you say you have three schedules. Let's say the medical schedule, right? And let's just say teaching schedule, that's two, and then the podcast schedule, that's three, allegedly. Usually, is it not one calendar where everything's central?
No, because my clinical schedule is all, privacy, HIPAA compliant. That's on its own separate platform. I don't use that scheduling for my personal life or my podcast. So that schedule has to be separate from everything else.
Oh, I see why. I see why. I see why. I see why. Yeah, that makes sense now. But then the other ones, it doesn't really matter where you schedule on. It's not like privacy, focus.
At one point, I played around with having like a Zcal calendar where like I only had chunks of time on a Thursday opened up where people could schedule with me. And I found that regardless of having that schedule, I still ended up just doing the back and forth email with people because for some reason that was what they were preferring. So again, it's like, sometimes you put a system in place, but if other people don't use your system, then the system doesn't work. And
Now I understand now.
yeah.
Wow, wow. So you had the system, but if the system was not adopted, so you were forced to go back to doing things the old way.
The old-fashioned way, pen and paper.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, it makes sense. Most of the people you're reaching out to, they've not been on a podcast before, and so they don't really know. Oh, you're supposed to do this and all that, and pretty much you just have to hold their hands and walk them through everything. And yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's too bad because sometimes people fall through the cracks because it becomes too much back and forth. And then, it's just like, man, we cannot get our schedules to line up.
Yeah.
Especially with
with
the time zone, with all these time zone differences, that makes it hard to.
Yeah, yeah. It is, it is, it is. Yeah. That's a very tough place to be in, where you have a solution to a problem, but you can't use the solution except the people know how to use the solution. And so you're left well, it's just easier for us to do it the manual way. And yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And I think it's also, other than the back and forth time, most of these, because they're quote unquote the podcast kind of people that go to podcast, they don't get reached out to a lot. Probably you might even be the only one that's reached out to them and so it's easy to get a yes because they're not being bombarded by people who want them to be on their podcast.
Yeah, I feel like the reception has been wonderful when I reach out to people and ask them if they want to be on my podcast. So far, pretty much everybody has said, yes, I'd love to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What so far within I guess approximately 1 year of the podcast. What have you been doing to like get the word out there and get this first sets of listeners of the podcast?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I am so busy with my clinic and my patients, I often do not have any time to post on social media. And so I have been very inconsistent about posting on social media. Sometimes I was trying to every time I had an episode, I wanted to post it on LinkedIn. And, so often I just never found the time. I never got around to it. So, I've been very bad about promoting my podcast. There's many ways where I could be promoting it, and I just haven't because I don't have enough hours in a day, and I'm exhausted by the end of my clinic schedule. And the last thing I want to
Yeah,
do is try to figure out, posting on social media when I'm exhausted and it's 10 o'clock at night. Because I teach and because I do a lot of continuing education, I think I ended up with a lot of clinicians that were interested in the podcast, and then maybe they tell their patients about the podcast, and so maybe that's kind of how it spread. Um, I don't really know I don't know how to compare my podcast growth to other people or what's normal.
okay,
But I
what's the growth?
well, let's see. All time. Okay, so it's been out for a year, and I think all time downloads are around 7,000. So,
Ooh, wow.
is that good?
Wow, that's a lot. Wow.
Yeah.
And how many downloads do you get per episode?
Well, like the older episodes, obviously more, because I think a lot of people when they first learn about it, they maybe go back to the first episode. So I think I've had over like 350 downloads of the first episode, and
Wow.
then there's certain episodes have over 200 downloads. I would say once an episode has been out for about a month, it usually has an average of like 80 to 120 downloads.
Wow. Wow. You're crushing it. You're like in the I think there's a data around that. I can't remember the exact figure, but you're in the top probably 5 or top 10% of podcasts.
Really? I had no idea.
Most podcasts don't get most podcasts get zero down. That's why most people quit because you're talking and nobody's listening. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that. Um, okay. Well, I think that because my podcast is very niche and that there are people, when you have a concussion and you're looking for answers, I do think that a lot of the people who find my podcast, they end up listening to a lot of the episodes because they're so informative. And they're really
Yeah,
providing answers to people who are seeking those answers. So I think that the people who find it, it's very meaningful to them.
yeah. Well, yeah, that does makes well. And you've been showing up consistently every.
Well, I have, but I'm getting to,
Yeah, well,
I have, but for the last, well, ever since the podcast started, I've been saying the exact same thing to, my close friends and family, which is this is not sustainable, in the sense of just how much time it takes me every week to make weekly podcast episodes happen. And so
yeah,
I have a lot of courses that I want to develop and that are important for me to develop, and I haven't had time to do that. And so I can't do all of it. I can't run my full, patient schedule and do the podcast and do all this course creation and course content that needs to happen. And so I'm at a point now where, I've been doing it for a year. Apparently the podcast is doing pretty well according to you and my download numbers, but I don't think I can continue to do weekly. I think I have to drop down to maybe like twice a month just because of the time
could you could
commitment.
you give you could I give you some possible ideas of what
Sure.
okay you've been doing the podcast for a while now, so what you could do is the days or weeks when you will not be able to like post something, letting instead of letting it be like that, not posting anything, what you can do is look at your most popular episodes in the past and then republish.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Right. So you're just
Yeah. I've seen other
re-uploading
people
the
do that.
file. Yeah, exactly. So people will love, it's one of your most popular episodes. So they love it, and having them listen to it again, it's also good. Plus, most of your new listeners, they might have not, they might, they, they might not have seen that episode, right? And so they get to listen to it again rather than just ghosting them. That's And the other thing you could possibly do is, have you thought about getting someone to help you out with the editing? All
Well, I mean, yes, but it's so expensive and my podcast doesn't generate any revenue. I'm just like, I don't want to have to spend money on something that's not actually paying for itself, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
haven't,
just I'm
I
just
mean,
curious. What's the amount what's the expensive amount you're talking about? So I just want to make sure we're the same.
oh, well, I mean, I've had people reach out to me and they want like $400 per episode.
Ooh, well,
Yeah.
400 pep.
Yeah.
Oh, I see why it's that expensive. I see why it's that expensive. I mean, you could get quality services of let's say you do one episode every week for like four episodes in a month for about $200 or $300 for the whole month, like for the whole four episodes, right?
Mhm.
If you could get services from people from the Philippines or India or any of those
I think if I had advertisers on my show that were like I could recoup that money, that would make sense. But um
yeah, does make sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And so far,
Hmm.
I have certain affiliate links. So I have
Okay.
like I have commercials on my podcast, but those also haven't generated any revenue. So I haven't had any success with having kind of like affiliate links and commercials on my show. So that hasn't really gone anywhere. Um, But yeah, I mean, if I could make $400 in advertising, then I'd happily give that money to somebody else to like take the work off my plate to actually do the editing. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am also, I am such a perfectionist and a bit of a control freak. And so I do, I do also really like to have the creative control over, oh, I want to cut this section out, or I want to make that section the intro, or, I just, it would be hard for me to like
yeah,
let go of some of that. Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Have you considered doing solo?
Um, yeah, I've also considered, like, a lot of times when I talk to somebody, if the episode is, say, an hour long, I've considered, do I just cut this in half and make it a part one and a part two? And that
Yeah,
way that gets me 2 weeks out of one interview.
yeah.
I don't know if that's annoying to listeners or if that's a good solution to my problem.
I mean that could work, right? They'll both have the intro and the outro, and then when in the outro of the part one, you tell them that, oh yeah, look forward to the outro of the part two. Plus, it also helps them, right? Instead of having to go through 1 hour chunks of episode, that you can make it bite size and something they can easily listen. Yeah, it's
Right. Yeah, I think that might be a good solution for me because a lot of my episodes, they are 45 minutes to an hour. And so if I did just make shorter episodes, and have a part one and a part two, that would, allow me to continue maybe doing the weekly.
Yeah, I mean, when you do that, you start asking questions and recording in a way that even though you cut it into two, it's each can stand on its own. Does that make sense?
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I don't listen to part two and I can't get anything out of it because I did not listen to part.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that could work. That's the thing about podcasts. You have the full creative freedom of what you want to do. That's what I love about. Yeah, you're the boss. You get to make the decisions. Your word
Yeah.
is the
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Well, it will be interesting, to see what year two holds.
yeah. Because the thing is, I know it's so there's a lot like podcasting is not. That's why I don't advise people to start a podcast. It's hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But getting those first of listeners, 100 or 100, I would love a situation where, and the thing is, if you keep doing this long enough, right, you have back episodes that you can just keep republishing on your feed. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're like your year one now, I mean, you could do that for probably 1 or 2 months and, and do it. But then when you're in like year two, most of your listeners will be new listeners. They probably, even if they've listened to the episode before, they probably forgotten, and it would be a good way to just remind them and inspire. And that would work for maybe 2-3 months, and before you get back on your feet and have something.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, the reason why I asked about solo episodes is that I've noticed that when I do solo episodes, it's easier to edit. It takes legs back and forth just to get it done. Right now, of course, sometimes you have to put in research and all that, but this is like what you do, like, and you understand. And so you could do 5 minute, 10 minute episodes, and yeah, and that would be valuable. Just share one interesting scientific, interesting stuff, right? And
Hmm.
just break it down. Yeah, this is what you do in your medical like you talk about what you do is about related concussion stuff in your medical practice. Yeah, I mean, you could take one, you could just go through some of the common questions people ask, when people who have concussion, what the questions you notice they ask, and take one of those questions and answer it, some of the common myths, and just pick it bite size, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, straight to the point. And voila, you have an episode, right? No back and forth. And you do minimal editing, and episode is ready. And probably if you do 2-3 hours, you would have gotten maybe 2, 3, 4 episodes out of.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a route you could. Yeah, I mean at the end of the day, it's what do you want to do? That's like the question. What do you want to do? Because you can do anything, and it's overwhelming, but it's also empowering.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, I don't want to lose the momentum that I feel like I have happening
Yeah,
right now. So I may have to implement all these strategies just to be able to keep that weekly episode going.
yeah, yeah. If there's anything I could do, possibly, I'll be happy.
Well, you gave me a good recommendation for the editing piece, so I'll check that out.
Yeah, yeah, because uh, the fact that when you talked about stopping the podcast, I felt it's because sometimes it's easy, like, it's easy for life to just get in the way. And for, 6 months, you're like, oh, wow, that's true. I've never really published an episode on the podcast.
Yeah. Yep. I know. It was a tough decision to try to figure out how to make, there's not enough hours in a day to get all the things done I want to get done.
Yeah. And then the question I have is, does the podcast make,
Not at all. No.
do you have plans to monetize the podcast?
Well, as I mentioned, I have commercials and I have affiliate links and nobody's using them. So far that hasn't panned out as a way to kind of help at least get the podcast to pay for itself. So I don't know if I should just keep trying different affiliates and different affiliate links, or if I should, um, I don't know, figure something else out. But it's one of those things that I also I haven't had time to even figure that piece out either. So, that's why, um, I've just kind of been doing what I've been
Yeah.
doing. And yeah.
Have you thought about creating your own products, or probably getting people to like what's the word now? Either creating your own product or offering your own service. Like, I mean, you're a medical practitioner, right? People, I don't know how that would work, but I mean, what you do is your podcast talks about is what you do in real life. Have you thought about seeing how you can get listeners to go on to reach out to you, contact?
Well, I mean, right now I have a waiting list. So,
Oh,
I'm busy. My schedule's booked up. And I do think that, some people who's locally, if they've heard my podcast and then, they want to come work with me, there's not enough needs. So right now my schedule is booked up solid and I'm working as many hours as I can possibly find the energy to work, in my clinic. Yeah. So, I mean, I have my book, that's a product, right? But
yeah. Okay. What's you have a lot that I'll be looking forward to, like circling back probably 1 year, 6 months from now. Ayla, how's the podcast, and what advice would you want to leave with fellow podcast?
for other people who are doing a podcast, well, I think for me, I really do want to keep my I want to keep the episodes high quality, and so
Okay.
I don't want to put out like weekly episodes and have the quality of my podcast go down just because I'm trying to do weekly episodes. And so that is at least, my challenge is I don't want to get to the point where the pressure to come out with a podcast every week means that I end up with episodes that I'm not happy with. And again, being a perfectionist, that means that the bar
Yeah.
is set very high all the time. So I think that's something to just be aware of as a podcaster is, how do you preserve your quality when you're also trying to go for quantity?
Yeah. I guess 6 months from now, you'll have that dialed in and figured out. And I'd love to see what your perspective is on that.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
hit me up in 6 months and I'll give you an update.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Ayla. Where can
Yeah.
listeners listen to your podcast and also connect?
So my podcast is on YouTube. It's on Apple Music. It's on, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, all the major platforms that people are listening to, iHeartRadio. So it's on most major streaming platforms for podcasts. It's called Life After Impact, the Concussion Recovery Podcast. And
Yeah.
then my website is lifeafterimpact.com. So people can also listen to episodes directly from the website and get the transcript. And that also has a link to my book as well, which is on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll put the links in the description so listeners can click and go dive into this. It's been quite eye opening listening to your podcast. One of the things that caught my attention was what do you do when you have a solution but the people you created the solution for will not adopt it.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I hope you enjoyed listening to this journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And don't forget to join the newsletter at mypodcaststory.com/join for more stories and podcasting insights. Until next time, keep telling your story because someone out there needs to hear it.